But I also want to like sort of see what you need the most, and then we can focus on those topics. So, but let's take a moment. If you could introduce yourselves, like obviously your name, and then what you teach, and then if you want to add maybe one very exciting fact about yourself to humanize yourself outside of just our workplace role that we have. I'm Elizabeth Collins. I'm the director of the National Endowment for the Humanities grant here at the college, and I teach history, and I teach classes in the humanities as well. I've been here, I think this is my 13th year. And then secretly, don't tell anybody, in addition to this job, I'm also a visual artist and I paint portraits.
Nice.
So, yeah. Can we pass it around? May I pass to you?
Why not?
Here's the talking stick. It's virtual.
Thank you. Magda Piper. I'm from ENT department, the building T across the street.
Yeah.
This is my, I want to say, fourth or fifth semester, something like that. I started the COVID semester, so whatever.
Yeah.
Wherever that lends me.
That was 15 years ago.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Mm-hmm.
I teach there graphic design, AutoCAD, intro to automation, descriptive geometry, depending on the season.
Yeah.
And fun fact, I don't know if that's fun, but I'm mechanical design engineer by trade.
That's fun for engineers.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
That's
I
wonderful.
come from the manufacturing background and
Yeah.
decided to ditch the manufacturing for teaching.
Yeah. Thank you, Magda. You picked an interesting time to make the switch. So.
Yes, I quit during COVID. With the talking stick.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Davis. I'm from the nursing department. I teach the medical surgical nursing. Been here for about 9 years now at Triton. And fun fact, I love to craft. I love making wreaths.
Oh.
And I love hosting paint parties.
Okay. What's that called? What, a pink party? What is that?
Paint party.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Painting.
So
you can join to.
Yeah.
Sip, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We all need to
Yeah.
have some entertainment these days. So. Okay, you got to pass that stick.
Oh. Let's pass it here.
Yelena, yeah.
Sure. My name's Yelena Cheka, and I actually work with Dr. Davis, so I teach her med-surg, one of her lab sections.
I used to know when you work, I see these masks.
I know. And it's only my second time, so, you know, we're still kind of getting to know each other as well, just because we don't see each other all the time.
Yeah.
Fun fact, I started out my education out of high school here at Triton. I played for the volleyball team.
Oh my
Came
goodness.
back, did my nursing here, and now I'm back again, starting to teach.
So you have sweatshirts from different eras.
I just found my Triton jacket that I had embroidered with Triton and then volleyball in the underneath it. So I was just cracking up as I pulled it out of the closet. I was like, wow, what do I do with this? I'm like, I gotta I don't know,
Frame
shadow
it.
box it or
Shadow
something.
box it.
So
Yeah.
it's got the volleyball patch.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's really funny. So
Well, welcome back.
thank you.
Yeah. You have to pass the stick now.
Oh.
That's fine. You can throw it anyway.
Yeah,
Underhand,
there you go.
overhand, fancy.
My name is Salvatore Soriano. I'm a music instructor. This is my fourth semester, so I actually started during COVID. So hopefully this will be my first semester on campus for the entire semester. Fun fact, my first music teaching job was teaching third grade music at Cicero. And it's fun because actually I have one of those students this year at Triton.
Yeah. Wow, that's full circle.
Yes.
Well, it's nice to meet you. I know I've received emails from you
Yeah.
and the great programming that you offer and your department offers. So it's wonderful to have you in person.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know what to do.
Yes.
Yes. And YouTube. My name is Kach Yuni,
Mhm.
and I teach value of plants to the society,
Okay.
value of plants to the society, and
Which department is that?
it is in it's at business technologies.
Okay, thank you.
I've been teaching here for about 8 years. Prior to that, I still teach for Columbia for the past 25 years, Columbia College.
Oh, yeah.
And I have been working for Chicago Park District for about 26 years. retired from there. And
What's your job with them?
Pardon me?
What's your job with them?
With the Park District,
Yeah.
I was a horticulturist, and I
Ah.
also have a patent, an international patent for a pepper that I hybridized.
Wonderful.
And you can see that if you type on Kochterrii, Kochterrii. Tim is the person who helped me with that. And when we did that, we now thought that it's going to be that much. Then tomorrow it got out of our hand and went to the patent, and it got. So I enjoy teaching. Actually, and the fact is about 27 years I have been teaching.
Yeah, you
for
must.
various different colleges.
Yeah. Well, it's always nice to have so many faculty here and adjunct faculty as well, because I know you've all had careers outside of just this, and it adds more to what we're doing into our perspective. Because sometimes corporate America is ahead of education, and sometimes education is ahead of corporate America. So, yeah. But I'm sorry, I interrupted the throw. Do it again. She's ready.
Yeah, I said that. I did.
Oh, did you catch it?
Yeah.
Got it?
Okay.
What was the directions for the fun fact? I was in the restroom.
Whatever.
Anything?
Well, I mean, appropriate for work. Not too fun.
So
Medium
I
fun.
almost know everyone because they're in the TILT project, so good to see everybody. My name is Angela Staunton, and I'm an instructor in the education department, so I work with pre-service teachers. I've been here 7 years. It started off as an adjunct, and now I'm full-time for 3.
That's right.
Yep, and then a fun fact, I don't know, this is weird. So my daughter just started high school. She's a freshman, and she's going to the same high school that I went to and the same high school that my mom went to. So 3 generations, and we're all 30 years apart exactly. So like my mom graduated 65, I was 95. She'll be graduating in 2025.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Nice. Symmetry.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Well, thank you for taking a moment to introduce. It's nice to see people that I already know, but haven't seen in a while. So, because I'm a teacher, I brought an activity. So I'm going to ask you to write down how you would define inclusion. Like, what is it? What does inclusion in your classroom mean to you? And you don't need an official definition, just in your own words. Like, how would you say it? And it's a big thing to define, so you can just pick one aspect of it. You don't have to eat the bear. You could just do the bear's hand. Okay, and then when you're done, because we don't want to waste paper. I don't know if you know this, but we're in a time of great environmental change, so we're going to use both sides today, just out of respect to the tree that died for us. On the flip side, if you could write down, and you don't have to write it all the way out, but just think about, what is one thing you do in your classroom to make your students feel included? One thing that you've tried that you could help them feel more at home in your classroom, more comfortable, more understanding of your care for them as students? One thing you do for inclusion. man, you thought you had the hour off and now you're doing all the work and I'm just standing here.
Well, enjoy it.
Okay, so let's see what people have about this definition. I just always think there's like the technical definition, right? Like, which is usually pretty boring, like fully involving and engaging students in a community of learners in the classroom. Okay, but the way that we put it in our own words from our own experience is often much more insightful. So who wants to start us off by just saying, how did you define inclusion? I'm going to include everybody in doing this, so we'll just take turns. And if you want to pass for this time, you can, of course.
I'll start.
Thank you, Ellen.
Sure. I have it as involved, everybody's involved, and everybody's able to contribute, listen, and support.
Yeah, that's so hard to everybody, right? Because we have our front row students, and we have our students who are like, please don't see me. What did you have, Magda?
I said all levels, and I mean all levels of comprehension or
Yes.
understanding.
Yeah.
All backgrounds, because that's also my differentiation, how they understand certain things.
Yeah.
And different, understanding different ways of learning. Some learns by listening, some by reading, some by watching, some by doing.
Yeah.
So understanding students,
Yeah.
which portion of, what type of learning
Yeah.
they.
So you're reaching them with styles, and then also you're meeting them where they're at. Like some students are very much beginners,
Yes.
and others have different points of reference or experiences. If you're in a medical or technical field, some come with experience.
Yeah.
Okay, Cheryl, what did you have?
Kind of the same thing. Just making sure everybody feels that they belong, that they have a purpose, and just meeting them. You know, it's really it's a challenge for the instructor, but it's important to meet all the domains of learning: the cognitive, the affective, the psychomotor. You know, and so you have to make sure that you have different types of activities and to reach them. So a group work, or you know, sometimes they love when I say, get out your phones, let's do poll everywhere, or you know, let's look at this. I'll bring something from the lab and show it so they can feel it and touch it. So it's so everybody that learns in a different way can understand.
It sounds like you make it inclusive by giving them experiences to participate in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have anything different from this for their definition, or in addition to?
Well,
We'll go Salvatore and then Koch.
I was just gonna say, like, most of what is shared I've already said, but I guess the end result for me is for them to feel safe. They can't get into this. Like, to me, that's the.
Ooh, to feel safe. Okay. Well, I can't wait till we flip that card over and find out how you do that. The answer is right beneath. Koch, go ahead.
You know, what I do is that during the course of the class, I I put different questions on the basis of what we are discussing on and off. Then I pick the students. I say that now what do you think, what do you think, what do you think? So about 3 or 4 times during the time of the class, I pause my lecture and I ask them to comment on what they think about it.
Yeah, so you include them by calling on them.
But yeah, I pick up students and know what do you think, what do you think, what do you think?
Yeah, and once they get used to that, they become more comfortable.
Right.
Because if we don't invite them to speak, they just.
Yeah, some people are kind of a little bit nervous. Like some students,
Yeah.
Nothing comes out of their mouth.
Yeah.
Thing is that's how probably the stage fright or anything what I had in the beginning actually.
Yeah.
How to get rid of it, but at least they know that they are part of the class and they have to be focused on what they're doing or what they're listening.
Okay. Angela, you're in education, so do you want to add something?
It kind of touches on what everybody said, but I just kind of said, inclusion is like honoring and valuing
Yeah.
everybody regardless of ability, race, religion, etc. Same kind of.
So what gets in the way? What gets in, not for us, for our students, what gets in their way of feeling included? Take a moment to think. You don't have to write this one. We ran out of paper, so.
Can you repeat that, Chris?
Yeah, so we watch our students, we try to include them, but from where they're sitting, from their experience, what gets in the way of them feeling included? It doesn't need to be your class, it could be any class. What are the barriers? What makes them feel isolated in classes? What are the barriers for them?
Give a negative remark, because, when somebody talks and if you say no, or, a discouraging remark, that naturally will alleviate the student's attention and focus and stuff, according to me.
Yeah.
Right. So even if they might be wrong, but still, you should first focus on the right part of what they said and then correct on that.
Yeah, a teacher who shuts them down.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, what's another thing?
I also noticed, and I just experienced this, and I came home crying. I was subbing in a high school, and I was co-teacher, and the main teacher comes in. She even didn't say hello to students. She sit her butt on a chair, and for 22 minutes, it was advisory.
Yeah.
She sat on her phone, and zero interaction with students. If you come from that background, when you go to school, you don't know what to expect. So not addressing the students.
Yeah, by name.
By name, calling them, hey you.
Yeah. By their correct
number.
name. By their correct name.
Yeah.
Yeah. To not
Yeah,
say, I'm not familiar with this name, so I'll just not say it, or I'll say it wrong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask my student at each of semester to write their name, not the name they have it in a syllabus or
Yes.
but the way they want to be called, because sometimes they're using the second name or whatever, or nickname that it's much better.
Yeah.
So, but I think when they come from the background that they never were even addressed by the name, that's where they can feel like, okay, I'm another number.
Yeah.
They don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And also coming from the huge classrooms, like if you have 38 students or 28 students, like in a public schools, they are numbers. So become, like if we hear 20 people.
That's right. It's whenever a teacher says, I'm not good with names, I think you're an amateur. Get good. Get good.
But from that point of view, I don't know, is it right on our side to ask the students to write their name and put it, because with the best of personally, I don't think that I'll ever be able to memorize the students of 28 students all the time and call them by name after even 2 or 3 months.
Mm.
I don't know if anybody is able to do that, I appreciate it, but.
Well, do you try?
Can you ask the students to say that, put a name tag in the class, or rather?
Yeah.
I mean, I will not be able to, because I will not be able to remember the names of all the students and call them by name.
I can ask them to make a name tag, and it's like standing in front of them.
Oh, okay.
And it's like colorful, they can draw on it. And I ask them to bring it for at least first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And after that, I'm getting there. The other thing that might help you, the sitting chart. If you do the sitting chart, write their names, and then that's your name. So that's,
it's repetition, yeah. I'm not saying it's easy.
No.
But try to get 50% better. Or tell them, I struggle with this, but I want to know you. So help me know you by, and they'll work. They would be more honored to know that you were trying and to see you trying than the teacher who just.
Okay. Another thing is
well, we're going to leave that alone and keep going just so we can cover everything.
I need them to sign up that.
Calling. Yeah.
Calling me up a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all in process for all of us. So let's think about ways that students might not feel included based on their identity.
It's like a personality thing. Some students are outgoing, some would, like you said, rather sit in the back.
Yeah.
And some you have to pull a little bit more out of them. You see it, you know, because I watch them as like when I get them, and they're just, you know, they come into class with uncertainty, and they don't know how this class is going to be. So some are real standoffish, some will just sit and wait. Then after a couple of weeks, they start to warm up, and then they start to say, okay, you know.
That's true.
Yeah, so.
Go ahead.
I'm just saying, sometimes it takes a little time for them to kind of get used to it, you know.
Yeah.
It's just like the first day of kindergarten sometimes, you know, students come in and they're, you know, they want mom or they're not sure. And so it just takes time to get acclimated to the course itself and the teacher. You know?
Yes, that's true.
Do you mean identity, like a gender identity?
Race, sexual
Race,
orientation, could be religion, could be ability, if somebody's disabled. Salvatore, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say identity, especially for here, this is the first generation college student.
That's right.
And I can relate to it because I was first generation for my family.
Yeah.
And, you know, people around you look like they got it together, so you just kind of clam up. And then when you get home, there's no one to really talk about that experience with because they're just like, oh, it's so great you're in college. You know what I mean? Like they're so happy for you, but they don't understand all the other things that go with it.
Yeah. Something I wanna like make sure that our focus is on today. And it's been so interesting to hear from you. I realize we're almost halfway through, so I'm just gonna focus in on a few things to make sure that you leave with what you came for, if that's okay. When we're talking about inclusion, everything you've said is wonderful teaching. It's the skills that we build with our students over time, learning how to reach them, learning how to teach them. And there's something we want to make sure we're consciously adding to that. And that is an understanding that we live in an unequal society. Historically, this country creates great opportunities for possibility, but it also comes with pre-existing categories that were not always treated equal. In higher education, this is true. College used to be and was created for a certain population that was quite elite. And we're at a very democratic institution. Depending on where you were educated, it may be the case that the way you were educated is not what you should be replicating with your students, because the students sitting before you may be very different people. So we want to add to all the skills that you already possess as a teacher, all of the things that you've developed over years and years, and then also today to reinforce and look at specifically this idea of inclusion. The idea that in a society where injustice exists, how do we make sure that our classroom is not repeating that, but instead is creating this opportunity for students to be seen as their whole selves and to be supported in that way. And it's not just our approach, but in addition, it's what we're teaching and how we're talking about what we're teaching. So I think we're going to move to that part. One of my favorite philosophers is a Brazilian educator named Paulo Freire, and he says, it doesn't hurt here to repeat the statement, still rejected by many in spite of its obviousness, that education is a political act, that when we're in the classroom, we have a choice to leave things the way they are or to make things better. And this is something that I think in terms of us being intentional about and having a few more skills to bring into the classroom, it can be very helpful. So as we go forward, taking a look at this, you know, your syllabus is a document that the school requires you to have. Every year there are more sections you need to have. You need to have these dates. You need to have your business procedures. And we're not dealing with that today, although there could be so much to say about it. But instead we're going to look at how does this document engage students as collaborators in our course? How can we shift some of the power dynamics in the classroom, where the teacher is the one who knows and the student is the one who must repeat? where we make all the rules and they follow all the rules. I have to think about this very intentionally as a white woman when most of my students are students of color. If I'm taking the role that only I know things, and if I create a very rigid system and expect them to adapt to everything I'm asking for, without asking them, without involving them, without hearing from them within this process, then I've created a structure where I'm on top and they're on the bottom. Now that said, we all know that we are the facilitators. We're the ones who have, you know, the knowledge, and we want to share it with them. So how do we make this more of a sharing dynamic? This is something to start thinking about when we're in our syllabus. So a good syllabus, an inclusive syllabus, looks for places where students get input into how the course goes. Now, if you're in the medical field, if you have certifications, that space is smaller. I teach in the humanities, so that space may be wider. I know it's not the same for every discipline. We're going to look at places where we can shift some power dynamics, and we're going to talk specifically about who is being seen as the expert in our course in addition to us. Some of us use textbooks, and they're pretty generic, but how can we create courses and syllabi that include people who are representative of the communities and identities of our students? How do we involve the voices of experts who are also immigrants, experts who are people of color, experts from the LGBT community? How do we create our classroom? Like, let's say you have a textbook and it just seems very generic to you. How do you involve other voices into your classroom, even if what you're doing is technical work? There's opportunities. So the categories we're going to explore today include creating greater representation of a diverse amount of people in your classes, the language that you use in your syllabus, and the way that your tone could be shaped to be more inviting or collaborative, and then also taking a look at classroom policies and how they're written. Okay, so I wanted to talk about representation of people, and also diversifying the voices and visuals in your classroom. So I'm talking about the experts that you use. So on the flip side of your card, does anybody have anything that relates to this? Something that you do in your class that brings to the front authors who are women, authors who are people of color, authors from the queer community, authors, writers, etc. Angela, go ahead.
I've been using for the last couple years now, it's called Rethinking Schools publication. They put out a, I think 4 times a year they put out a magazine, but they have lots of resources, books that they've created for teachers, where it talks, we read an article in class that talked about how transgenders are being ignored from like Google Classroom because whatever their sign-in is, you know, for their name, it can't be changed. It's like stuck with them forever.
Oh, yeah.
So if somebody's in the process of transitioning and now they're using a different name, it's not easily changed. Like even if in our virtual classes, it would be the same thing. Whatever you registered for, that's the name that shows up on Blackboard Collaborate. Yeah. So I'm trying to include all of these other, you know, resources that touch upon race, you know, LGBT, and gender, all that. Yeah, and it's easy for me because of my course content, but it might be hard for others.
It can be more difficult, like if you're in a medical program or in a technical program, but there are opportunities there as well. So I'll give a couple examples, and we'll see if this is helpful or if you have some ideas as well.
Angela, can you say it again? What is that?
Yes, it's Rethinking Schools. Let me make sure I have the right info, but I think it's Rethinking Schools.
Thank you for that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I'll give an example from Lisa Samra, who teaches in the speech department. She shows a lot of like examples of people speaking, right? Like TED Talks or what have you, because the students need to see good speakers. And she decided one year to look at that, and she noticed how many of her speakers were white or white men. And she decided, there's plenty of content in the world of good speakers, I'm gonna shift that. And so for one semester, she did all people of color to see if the students would even notice, and only one did. But there are messages there, right? So sometimes thinking about who's on your PowerPoint, right? Whose videos are you showing? There can be opportunities there to switch things out. So for example, for me, I think it's a lot easier. Like I teach a course in humanities, it's about art. And of course, you know, we're talking about Pablo Picasso and Henri Matisse and da-da-da-da-da. And I don't exclude them from the class, but when I show Picasso, I show right next to him an Algerian woman who was an artist in the 1940s by the name of Baya. And I show them, like, the thing we do with Picasso is about modernism. So I show them him, and then I show her right next to him. So they're getting more than just one thing. And that's something to think about. You know, like, there's a debate, but sometimes I think it goes in circles. Well, you can't just not teach, you know, this great writer. It's like, yeah, you can teach that great writer, but you also have to understand that there are other voices too. So how do you bring them in? So thinking for, like, if you have just a textbook, then you can think about the presentations that you're making and whose visuals are included. Another thing to think about is if there is a theory in your class, or if there is research you're presenting, and that research is done by a member of a marginalized group, that you explicitly let the students know that. Like I showed you a quote by Paulo Freire. Who is an amazing Brazilian educator and philosopher. So telling students, I'm intentionally including voices that are not from the dominant group in your class. This theory was made up by so-and-so. And then you give credit to who that person is as an individual. And that's something to think about, that students who are from that same group or share that same identity are seeing examples that they can identify with. And I bet if you look in your courses, you will find, if you look, that there are thinkers in there, there are theories in there that may be helpful in this way, depending on what you teach. The videos you use, or even some things like when you use examples in your classroom, like in my online class, I'm like, upload your document with your last name, you know, .pdf. And so instead of using the example smith.doc, I might look at my roll and see that there are 7 Garcias, which could happen at Triton. So it would say like Garcia.doc. So thinking about the examples that you use when you do an example with names, that those names might represent the names that are common to our students. Like there can be some opportunities in there to make sure that people are being represented in your class. Can anybody think, now that we've talked about it for a moment, of an example from your class that you think you could switch up? And I don't want to put you too much on the spot because we just started this.
Well, I think, you know, it's a good point. You know, when I'm teaching those lab sessions and telling patients how to talk to the mannequin and pretend like it's a patient,
Yeah.
I have a tendency to use Dr. Smith.
Sure.
And I didn't even think about using a different last name.
Yeah.
Only because it's a mannequin, so I'm just trying to get that student used to even talking to a patient in a way of describing what procedure I'm going to do to you today.
Yeah, that's a really good example. Mm-hmm. Others?
I'm all standard, so there is not much I can do because it's a standardized. So it's like you cannot switch IV.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so I am very much so it's much harder. However, when I address students, I always use you all or everyone. I don't say guys, even if they are mostly guys.
Yeah.
And when I even latest scholarship, it says female engineers. I say identify as female.
Oh yeah, okay.
Instead of just females. So because if it's a transition, you might wanna apply for that scholarship.
Maybe we should say male engineers.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Right? My niece is an engineer and she likes to say that. He's a male engineer. She's 2 years into her career and already tired of it, so it's understandable.
I just thought about that. I have to, when we're talking like we're doing questions and and I'll read the question and I'll say, well, because we always refer to a doctor as a man and a nurse as a female.
Yeah.
And so I'll have to kind of switch that up because I have male students in my class and say, you know, what is if you call the doctor, what is she going to do? Or if this, you know, the nurse, what is he going to do? So I have to switch it up like that for them. So
the next step, though, is telling them that you're doing that. It's called transparent teaching. We've always got like new things that we call things in education. But telling them, I'm trying to make this more inclusive. And in the past, I used to always say Dr. Smith, who's a man. But what should we call him? And then they can come up with a name. Do you know what or what should we call her?
Yeah.
Yeah, or what should we call them, right?
Right.
And then they can go, because our students get it. That's what's nice about Generation Z and millennials. They get it. They know, and when they see that you're working on it, they have a different feeling of what's going on in class. So there are a lot of little things that I think we can think about, opportunities. What images do we use in our PowerPoint? What do we put on the front of our class in Blackboard? And really trying to make sure that we're reflecting the students back to themselves. It's an important thing. Now, if you're in humanities or music, like Salvatore, I'm sure in your classes with music, there are plenty of opportunities to reach beyond the standards, yeah?
Yeah. But I mean, at the same time, say for music appreciation, I mean, for it to be IAI, the focus is Western music. But, you know, that is a very specific time period. But still, I do what you do. You know, like, the videos I try to highlight like the snow, do the melt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wanted to show also too that classical music, you know, there's a debate with classical music as there is with with everything. You know, what should we do with it? And I'm more of the side of just like it should be open to everyone. Like yes, we should listen to other stuff, but also it used to be very elitist and people like the stuff with Dudamel and others show that no, it's going to be enjoyed by all. And that's kind of the approach I take.
I think showing them that process, that it used to be this and now it's this.
Yes.
Or Western, that whole definition, like there's Western, meaning European and US, basically Australia. But within that, there's a lot of queer artists, right? There are women who are composing.
Yes.
There are people who, like African American influence on music could never be underestimated.
Right, and I go into that. So for instance, influences jazz.
Yeah.
Jazz, which is an African American art form, was spread like wildfire in Europe.
For sure. Yeah, I think sometimes this additional step of telling them why we're telling them that, or saying I'm in the process of changing this, can really help to engage them. Okay, so that's something to think about, is whose voices are they hearing? You can also think about, depending on what you do, if there are articles you want to add, like say, now I know this is hard in nursing, it's probably not like you can just like put something else in there, but there could be short articles for them to read that talk about diversity in your field and how your field is changing. And that's something that will really engage them in conversation. In engineering, talking about the gender, like the change in gender. It could just be a short article in a 15-minute conversation that's not going to necessarily derail your whole course plan, but just a moment that deals with that. Now I do this in class too. I already talked about this, so we'll just go right by this. And we're going to move to the next topic, which is looking at language in our syllabi. And I don't think we have the time for this, but I was going to ask you to highlight where you use the word I, where you use the word you, and where you use the word we. Which word should we have more of? We. Exactly. Like looking at those. And which word is the most troubling? Which one appears the most in your syllabus?
You, right?
Yeah, you will do this. You will, or the student will. you, the student, rather than we will. How many times in your syllabus do you say I? Yeah, so something I wanted to share with you today that I'll pass out and you can take it home and read it, is you should say something about yourself in your syllabus. You should tell them explicitly and transparently and openly what you're doing to make the classroom more inclusive. A statement from you, because you know, you're here today, you talked about your classes, you're all passionate teachers. Nobody would probably know that from your syllabus. They would just think you're very organized, right? You've got your business procedures, and that's fine. And the school will always require us to put more things. But think about what an I statement for you would be. That's a statement of inclusion. So I've got a couple examples here, and one I really like, it's about neuroscience, and the author says that neuroscience is biased because they always do the experiments on men, etc. So she literally talks about that in her statement of how she's dealing with what the data is in the course and what the reality may actually be, like how that bias will affect the course and how she's going to deal with it. So you can take these and, you know, read them at your leisure, which is probably very little right now, our first semester being fully back.
Thank you.
Now these ones are elaborate. Yours could just be simple. You can just start out with 4 or 5 sentences your first. Yeah, this is great. You can just start out with 4 or 5 sentences the first time you try it. You could at the end of the semester say, what do you think? Like, what else should I add to my inclusion statement? That's a way to include them, right? So thinking about the language in your syllabus, areas where you say you and could maybe change it to we. Look, I'm behind again. So this explicit statement to say what you're doing, the approach that you're taking. So for an example, I told my students that I changed my syllabus to make sure that half the artists we're looking at are women. And I told them that in a statement. I told them that whenever we're looking at a Western artist, we're also going to look at a non-Western artist to create more balance in our worldview. So just putting those things into writing, I think, can be helpful in them understanding that you're making this effort, that you're aware that you should. And for most of us, we're not Gen Z, right? Probably not. So I think reaching across the generation to make them aware that you're aware is something that helps to build that trust that you guys talked about in the beginning. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to work for medicine, but for non-medical, non-technical fields, talking about the sources that you're using. Like if there is a bias toward Western composers, talking about that, and then how you've created the class in dealing with that there are some and that you purposely included other composers, for example. So something to think about. I think in business, Koch, this would be important too. Talking about how businesses have changed, how corporations have changed.
Elizabeth, mine outlook, I was debating myself to kind of include some of the points that I've been hearing here. First of all, to me, education should be to eliminate the politics. That's what I personally experienced. The politics comes at a little bit an educated level or less understanding.
Yeah, that your focus is more on.
Education is to enlighten the outlook of a person.
Yes.
So a person who is educated trying to include politics is a diversity. There's a clear path for diversity. Because education is something universal. Knowledge is universal. So they're bringing a diversity of Western, Eastern, that kind of, or if it is saying that Western music, of course, no. Western has contributed, East has contributed much, because in my subject, I teach about the evolution. When you look at the evolution, to be very honest, West comes later than East. Because
Yes.
that's where the origin of
Yeah.
civilization started then.
Yeah.
So, I mean, actually, I feel that if I hear a person trying to talk about politics, as is the standard of education of that person is still to be enlightened.
Yeah. Well, and
Do you
also,
agree?
in some classes, we have to talk about politics. Like, I'm a historian. There's no way around it.
Politics come later as a power for superiority. Other than that, in education, of course, for example, George Washington Carver or Darwin, those people, or even for that matter, even E is to MC squared, who is energy person. I don't think that when you come to that level of thinking, this doesn't come at all. This looks for knowledge. Where the knowledge come from is not that. That is what the knowledge is. What is important, rather than where it is coming from. So in my case, actually, when I go to a class, I am looking at how to give what I know and how to learn also from what I don't know. I do not go to a class saying that I know. Still, I don't know. I don't think that even when I go.
Okay. Well, I
That's
mean,
my outlook.
like when you say politics, what I'm talking about is if there are power relations at play in our subject matter, that we identify them. If there's a dominant group and a group that's oppressed, we have to identify that. But that's not to say that I go in and talk about my political views. I'm talking about my subject matter. But when my subject matter includes aspects of power, then to talk about it openly, because they know it, they see it. So that's a good point. Thank you for saying that. And I like what you said about bringing your knowledge to the class,
Right.
and also admitting that there's more to know.
Surely.
They need to know that.
Definitely.
So thinking about, I like this example just because it's real explicit, and I have to say I had to do this. I'm just going to be plain. My syllabus was a little bit crispy, and I'm just using the word crispy because I can't use the word I want to be using. It was a little over the top. My syllabus laid it out so that I wouldn't have problems. But you're not.
Mine's very cold right now.
Yeah.
I need to change it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what does it hurt? When I started here, to be younger and to be female as a professor, especially in history, they expect some, different person to walk in other than me. I think I really had to hold the line. Well, now I can. I've been here long enough. I know what I'm doing. And I thought, this is really something that I should shift. So I did it, and then I told them I did it. And I said, what do you think about that? They said, that's so much more respectful. And a lot of my students said, I'm a mom of 4. I don't need life skills. I got life skills all day long, So thinking about, now not the whole thing doesn't have to be, holding them like a fragile egg. I don't think that at all. I mean, I'm pretty rigorous and tough. But thinking about the places where we can lighten it up. To make them, because they're adults, Of course, at the same time, there are many of them that are 19 and really need those life skills. They really do. But yeah, thinking about, I like this one. You have the opportunity to. This one I like, rather than that, like the word penalize. So just looking at your language in your syllabus, I think is one thing that you can do. This is another example of office hours, like how you write about your office hours. I even changed mine after looking at this a little bit more. In talking about all the reasons why they should come by. Like they want advice on where they're transferring. When they're reading, they realize that they're not absorbing any of the information. That's so many of our students. So procrastination, like all of these reasons why they could come to office hours, to make it a little more explicit, because they don't know why they should come see you. How many of your students come see you?
Quite a bit.
Okay.
But it's because I go to them and I say, let's meet today, let's discuss this.
You instigate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To them, I had few students who would come in because they felt like they failing me. And I say, you don't fail me, you fail yourself.
Yeah.
But let's talk about it. And they are like, I'm sorry, I was late. And I say, great, but what can we do about it? How
Yeah.
can I help you?
Yeah.
With
What
that?
about conferences online or by phone? Has anybody tried that?
Yeah.
I mean, we all did
Yeah.
during how did that go, Salvatore?
To me, honestly, we actually are more responsive online because it's
Yes.
convenient for them. So,
And there's a little distance. They are
Okay.
mortified to come see us. It's like being called to the principal's office. They're ashamed. They're nervous. But you put a screen in front of a Gen Z, they're cool with that. Did you notice that with yours?
And it makes me crazy. 'Cause
Yeah.
I feel like there needs to be a little bit more of a balance. Like we need to break that a little bit because they're not always going to have that available to them, and it may hold them back in a specific type of job or role
that's
or
true.
opportunity.
Yeah.
So like with my own personal kids, I'm like, oh no. So like I try to cut that habit every
Yeah.
once in a while with them, only because of that. I want them to see that you have to learn how to communicate face to face.
Yeah.
You have to kind of little bit at a time break yourself in with it because like in nursing,
Yeah.
there is no choice. I mean, you're in a
That's
patient's
true.
face, so
Yeah.
you have to be comfortable
Yeah.
with that face-to-face interaction,
Mhm.
and we can't just keep doing it
Yeah.
this way, not catering to them, but continuing that norm.
Yeah.
Because if we continue that norm, everything face-to-face, I feel like it's just gonna break down and it's not gonna be good,
Yeah.
because they're not gonna know how to communicate that way.
Somehow I feel like one conversation, whether it's online or in the classroom, one just me to them makes every other one more easy. That it's like that first, so it could be online and then face to face is easier because you're known to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Angela, were you gonna say something?
No.
Okay, good.
For me, it's
I mean,
also
okay, that's fine.
easier if they stay after, so like I continue the class and I never end the class, it just continues. So they feel like they are still in a classroom, but it's actually half the class time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it looks like we're almost to the end here, and I think we didn't get to one section, which was looking at your classroom policies and rules.
Thank you.
But look, it's such a short slide, we can do it in 3 minutes.
Yes. Can we go for a second to the?
Yeah,
previous
well-
one? I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
So these are just things to think about, and the ones that apply to you and to your teaching style, Language that lets students know we think they're capable and can succeed. I've started saying in emails, I want you to succeed. I think when our students are struggling, they feel ashamed, and saying, I want you to succeed. You got your photo?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay,
you're
very good. Can I go to the next one?
Yep.
Koch, can I go to the next one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I was deciding. Sure.
Well, I can put it up at the end too again. Look at this short one. We always like to end with a little bang. But looking at your classroom policies and rules, I have started giving my students a copy of what I normally have and then saying, what do you think we need, what don't we need? Like we came to the agreement that a student could look at a text message but not be on their phone continuously. Now, it depends on your teaching style, but like they were like, well, we'd like to be able to just, if it's going to be like 3 seconds or less that you're not yelling at us. And then I said, and what if it's like a longer thing? Well, then we'll go outside and take care of business and come back in. I said, okay, that's reasonable. Like some of you are caring for parents and children and you might need to check. So but I said, but what I want to avoid is that you're in the phone. So what should we do if you're in the phone? Well, talk to us one-on-one, and then if we keep doing it, then tell us, whatever, don't come back in or something, or go outside. I said, okay. That's fine. So just feeling like they have, now it depends on your class and where you want to make these choices of where to give them choices. So for example, in my class, they often have just a generic assignment, and then they have like 6 choices of artists to work with, so they get to choose which artists they want to look into. Or sometimes they get a choice of this kind of an assignment or this kind. You can do it this way or you can do it this way. Now I know in your field that may not be as easy.
Well, it depends on.
You can put the ID in the left or the right.
Well, there's some variability there. There's also the whole, when you're in a lecture portion, that if they're doing a project or a paper or some research, that you can give them a list of, here's the topic and here's the different areas that you can look at or that you can choose for this section or portion of it.
Yeah.
So,
Angela, you're in education. What's an example of like a way that teachers and students can co-create a rule or a norm in the classroom? I literally just called on you, but
I know.
But take a moment to think too.
Well, I was gonna say, I do what you said about the choices. I've actually come up with like 2 different assignments for certain things. You could approach the task this way or that way. But in terms of policies and rules, I haven't tackled that yet, but what you could do is that first day, say, we're gonna create this syllabus together.
Yeah.
What do you think?
This part, yeah.
Here's the outline. This is what the college requires of me.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do a working document like through Google Docs where they're creating it together.
They pretty much come up with my same rules.
Yeah, they do.
To be honest,
I know.
it's a ruse.
I mean, I have to admit, when I taught K-12, I did this all the time.
Yeah.
It's just something that just doesn't carry over, you don't think, because you're just in that mold that to be strict or whatnot. But K-12 is very common the first day. You create like class rules, class policies, so that they feel they're part of it, and then also more likely to stick with it too, because it's like, hey, this is you. You decided this would be the policy, like you said, for texting or whatever.
Yeah. Well, you have actually brought this whole thing full circle, because you had students in K through 12, and now you have them in college, and they grew up with this expectation of having a voice. Right?
And I can say just from teaching in K-12, like, we're not trying to, but higher ed is like behind the ball. And, a lot of things that we're just starting to talk about in higher ed is what I learned 10 years ago when I became.
Yeah.
So,
I couldn't agree more.
so we're kind of catching up.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's catch up.
And they've gone through this. This is what's been normal.
Yeah, so maybe they can teach us in that way. Well, that's an hour, and so thank you so much for your time. It was nice to get to know each one of you a little bit and hear some perspectives on this. Obviously, this is just a small step towards creating more inclusive classrooms, and I mean, there's much more conversation to be had on the campus about this. So thank you for your time. Thank you for all you do for the students in the classroom. Thank you to the CTE.